Hello everyone, and welcome to the 15th annual public meeting of Canada's International Development Research Centre, or IDRC. Bonjour et bienvenue à la 15e Assemblée publique annuelle de la CRDI.
International Council International Development, or IDC. We are for the International Development of Canada, or the CRDI. My name is Dorothy Nyambi, and I'm the Chief of Board of Governors. I'm pleased to call this meeting now open.
By acknowledging that the IDRC's head offices is situated in the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, whose stewardship of the land and waters we now call Ottawa date back to time immemorial. Les connaissances
Indigenous people are strongly tied into the ways of life. As an organization that supports and shares knowledge in Canada and abroad, this recognition means reaffirming the value of local and Indigenous knowledge. Our recognition also aims to recognize the history and experience related to colonization.
Much work remains to be done on the path of reconciliation, including decolonizing knowledge. This acknowledgement reflects our commitment to supporting and honoring Indigenous and local voices. Miigwech, thank you et merci.
We are grateful to see a diverse audience, online audience from across Canada and around the world, including, notably, representatives from the Canadian government, the diplomatic community, civil society, the research community, grant recipients, and partners. Thank you all for joining us.
First, a few housekeeping rules. This event is being recorded for future use. It will be conducted in Canada's two official languages, English and French. Interpretation is available in both languages. In the room, there are headsets that are available for simultaneous interpretation. Online interpretation is available by selecting your language of choice when you log into the meeting. To change your language or other viewing preferences, please click on settings, follow the gears. I'm hoping that at this point of post-pandemic or into the pandemic, we all know what to do. L'interprétation est disponible dans les deux langues.
Interpretation is available in two languages. In the auditorium, headsets are available for simultaneous interpretation. For those that are online, interpretation is also available by clicking on the language of your choice when you log into the assembly to change your language.
Microphones in the room for the audience that are present here. For those of you who are joining us online, you'll be able to submit questions by clicking the icon that shows a person with their hand raised. Enter your first and last name, click join, and then enter your question. And please, follow the instructions for the rest. Should you experience any technical difficulties online, click the question mark icon near the top on the right hand of your screen. There you can enter your email address and summary of the problem. And at any time you lose connectivity with today's live broadcast, you can click the refresh icon on the top right of your screen.
We will review progress made in implementing a implementation strategy in 2030. In this IDRC strategy of 2030, and in particular, how our strategic partnerships respond to the urgent global challenges for climate change.
I would like to begin by welcoming Julie Delahanty as the new president of IDRC. We'll be hearing from Julie in a few minutes, her first 6 months, as leader of the center, and how IDRC is maximizing the impact of the research investments that we do. Let me set the stage a little bit in a brief overview of IDRC's first 3-year check-in progress of Strategy 2030. This past year marked the first 3-year checkpoint to measure our progress towards Strategy 2030. While it is still early days, the analysis that IDRC is supporting research that is scientifically robust, legitimate to the context where it occurs, and targeted to pressing social and environmental challenges at local and global levels is certainly very clear. La CRDI a également réalisé des progrès importants dans l'atteinte de ses objectifs partenaires
and funding partnership objectives, already reaching the lower lower end of our co-financing target of 2025. The center is making progress in implementing environmental initiatives and is implementing many aspects of a multi-year diversity, equity, and inclusion. IDRC's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, both inside and outside the organization, will help to make us a leader in research and development we want to become. IDRC has improved its governance structure and relies on data and technology to work more efficiently and create a responsive work environment. Our ability to adapt to new models and tools is remarkable in a changing landscape of unprecedented challenges in the world.
IDRC is rising to meet the moment, using Strategy 2030 as a roadmap to leverage experience, scale solutions, get knowledge into the hands of local leaders who put it into the work for sustainable and positive change. Results from this past year are presented in IDRC's annual report, which is available to read and download at the website idrc.ca. This year's report focuses on mobilizing alliances for greater impact. There are powerful examples in the report, including ones that demonstrate how we are collaborating with research partners to promote climate-resilient livelihoods worldwide, including in Madagascar, Ghana, Mozambique, Colombia, and elsewhere. Strategy 2030 commits the center to expand the resources available for research through alliances with the Global South. This means engaging a diverse range of actors who make a meaningful contribution to global development. IDRC continues to pursue partnerships that generate greater impact and scale. The research results featured in the annual report and the more than 50 years of research supported since IDRC's founding demonstrates the critical role that research knowledge and innovation continue to play in building a more inclusive and sustainable world. Je suis très honorée de présider la CRD.
I'm honored to preside over the IDRC, and I would like to thank the Board of Governors, senior management, and all staff here at IDRC for their support I have received. I would also like to thank our Board of Directors, our staff, our partners, and participants and grantees for their hard work and contribution, and their contribution to the implementation of Strategy 2030. I should mention that the governors will be visiting the offices of Latin America and Caribbean America and in the Caribbean in the spring. This will be the first field trip or field visit they've made since since the pandemic. It is important for the governors to see firsthand the center's work and to learn from the original perspectives of our partners and grantees, participants. The Board of Governors is committed to creating an equitable IDRC that positions all employees to succeed. Our people, our personnel are at the heart of the center, and their work is essential to the IDRC's success. This year, the signing of a new collective agreement marked an important milestone, essential to the success of the IDRC and its workforce. Working together, IDRC staff, our partners, and the researchers of which we support, will meet the challenges that lie ahead and build on the successes achieved to date.
We have an exciting program ahead, which highlights the relevance of climate-focused partnerships. But first, let me turn the floor over to IDRC's Julie Delahanty. Since her appointment in June, Julie has been very active and actively engaging IDRC's partners, research grantees, and employees. This includes her first official visit to IDRC's Eastern and Southern African regional offices this fall, where she met with colleagues and grantees, partners from across the region. But I will let Julie tell you more of that herself. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Julie, and thank you, and looking forward to a very engaging public meeting. Over to you, Julie.
Merci, Dorothy. Thanks to you and to everyone.
Merci à Dorothy et à tout le monde à la CRD pour l'accueil chaleureux. Thank you for all attending in person and online. I look forward to the question and answer session. In our remarks, Dorothy, our program colleagues, and I have entered some of the questions that were submitted in advance, and we'll address others during the Q&A session.
First, let me say what an honor it is to lead an organization with such a tremendous track record in leveraging knowledge for impact in the lives of others. It's been an eventful first 6 months on the job, and I want to thank the board, the global team, and our terrific funding and research partners for their support. Comme Dorothy a dit, j'ai eu l'occasion.
Dorothy said I had the opportunity to meet all the IDRC staff either in person or virtually, virtually. And I've had with many of our external allies, partners and external partners, excellent exchanges. To date, one of the highlights in my international activities was my first visit as president of IDRC to Kenya, President to Kenya and Tanzania in September, which enabled me to deepen my understanding of our programming and to learn from our staff and research partners.
It's been a true joy to learn and see global challenges through the uniquely IDRC lens, a worldview that embraces collaboration and empowerment to drive sustainable and inclusive prosperity. One of the things that drew me to IDRC is its deeply rooted operating principle that those experiencing a particular challenge are best placed to identify the solutions. At IDRC, we believe knowledge and solutions are most impactful and sustainable when they're locally generated and context-specific. This is why we support Southern research by Southern researchers that helps to narrow the gap between knowledge.
For over 50 years, IDRC has been working with researchers in developing countries to produce high-level scientific results and to promote in the southern countries to promote knowledge, innovation, solutions that have responded and continue to respond to challenges around the world. This close partnership and deep networks with researchers in developing countries is a large part of what makes the IDRC so special and unique. Added value in its uniqueness also. It is an essential element that characterizes the IDRC's strength in development research in the developing countries. And in today's world, it's becoming increasingly able to count on these solid networks in the South and to build alliances and ecosystems. And
we know is facing multiple and compounding crises on a scale that represents real and common threats to humanity. And the world needs inclusive, sustainable solutions, solutions that are most effectively generated through local action and global connection. And that indeed is IDRC's raison d'etre. At IDRC, we are evidence-based change enablers working in partnership to generate knowledge and impact that responds to local and global challenges. We ensure that evidence from the research we support is actionable, available to, and used by decision makers to make real change. These knowledge networks, combined with IDRC's convening power to mobilize the funding partnerships that enable them, are our great strength. While the former is part of IDRC's DNA, the latter, mobilizing alliances, is a renewed area of intense focus for IDRC under our current Strategy 2030 and is also the theme of our annual public meeting today. As the term implies, alliances are about the center acting as both a convener and multiplier of like-minded funders across sectors to grow the resource pool available to drive progress on specific critical development issues. I'd like to just share with you a couple of instances where IDRC is working through alliances worldwide to respond to emerging and evolving challenges. We know that most challenges facing the world today have one thing in common. They're simply too big for any one player to solve alone. Premièrement, l'éducation est un domaine où les partenariats sont essentiels pour accéder à la recherche.
To go to for the important outcomes, this IDRC is really proud to actually participate in the educative systems, sharing of knowledge and innovation, and usually called CATES. It's an initiative from the CRD and the part which is the JPU, which supports learning between countries, southern countries, and between people working in national education systems and research into their priorities. IDRC and GPE are ideal partners. The GPE is the world's largest fund dedicated to improving education systems in low-income countries. With more than 80 partner countries and 80 countries and numerous other donors and education partners. For its part, the IDRC has supported educational research in the southern countries, the developing countries, for 40 years. Together through KICS, we bring evidence-based to strengthen national education systems, accelerate progress in developing countries. This also applies to situations where education and populations have been disrupted by conflicts and population displacements. For examples, quote-unquote, can't wait to learn. Technology from War Child Holland has been approved by the government of Chad, which has used it to help refugee children to stay in the national education system. In Uganda, District governments also support the integration of Can't Wait to Learn technology into the education system. Today, Ukraine and South Sudan are showing a keen interest in this tool.
Finally, I want to highlight where we're partnering to respond to rapidly changing and disruptive technologies. IDRC is a leading supporter of research and innovation on artificial intelligence, or AI, as a means to advance international development. We were among the first to support research in the Global South around the concept of responsible AI systems, systems that are ethical, inclusive, and sustainable. Over the years, our network of researchers and innovators has grown, and we now work with them to explore how to harness AI to address poverty and exclusion, improve food and health systems, confront the challenges of climate change, and make education more inclusive. The launch of ChatGPT put AI squarely in the global spotlight, and now other like-minded institutions and governments are recognizing the need for evidence-based solutions to both mitigate the risk and reap the rewards of this highly disruptive technology. From late 2023, just recently, we've partnered with the United Kingdom's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office to launch the Artificial Intelligence for Development program, which builds on our existing AI for Development in Africa partnership with the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency. This initiative responds to the ambitions of Africa's vibrant AI community, which is already developing innovations and carrying out research to help people thrive. This investment will promote inclusive and safe AI global design globally. We're proud to be part of a group of both public and private funders supporting AI research and innovations in the Global South. These are just two examples of how IDRC is building alliances to tackle big issues. Ces exemples montrent comment notre travail répond.
Examples show how our work responds to a rapidly changing context with an approach that relies on strategic partnerships and local research. They also reflect the essential need to collaborate with funders and research partners and like-minded research partners to tackle like-minded research to tackle the most precise issues.
Leveraging their skills, ideas, and resources, IDRC helps drive impact by closing key development gaps of the type I've just outlined. In short, achieving more together. Continuing with our theme of mobilizing alliances for impact, IDRC was one of the first to pioneer funding partnerships to support research on climate change adaptation across the Global South. We're going to now hear in turn from two of my amazing IDRC colleagues, subject matter experts on climate change, about some of our strategic alliances in this area. First, I'm very pleased to introduce Georgina Kemp. Georgina is a senior program specialist with the Climate Resilient Food Systems program. She's going to tell us about the Step Change Partnership. Over to you.
Thanks, Julie, and thanks everyone for joining us. So last week, the World Meteorological Organization officially confirmed that 2023 smashed global temperature records, surpassing previous years by a huge margin, so much so that we're now pushing against the scale that that organization uses to measure temperature increases. Any of us only needs to look at the daily news to know that climate change is being felt around the world. And so the time to support the most vulnerable, to adapt and to cope with the impacts of climate change is now. And we know enough to act. We have known for more than a decade. The problem that we have when we think about the slowness with which society is responding to the climate crisis is not a knowledge problem. It is a knowledge into action problem. It's about connecting what we know with what we do. And this is where Step Change comes in. Step Change is a $28.5 million partnership between the IDRC and the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs that takes specific aim at the space between knowledge and action. And it does this with the intention of driving equitable and inclusive locally led adaptation. Now, when we start to pay attention to the space between knowledge and action, then a new kind of actor becomes incredibly important. We call them climate knowledge brokers. Knowledge brokers are intermediary actors who move with ease between different knowledge holders, between different power holders in society, and they broker much more than just knowledge. They broker relationships, they connect people who might not traditionally work together, they build trust, and by doing that, they drive action. But knowledge brokers tend to be undervalued. They are certainly underfunded, especially by research funding organizations, and we are funding them in Step Change. Now, to help you understand some of the core ideas that I'm going to share in this talk today, I'm going to start with a very short video, which is an excerpt from a much longer video that was produced by one of Step Change's core partners. That's the Climate and Development Knowledge Network, or CDKN. They partnered with the Global Center on Adaptation to collect stories of locally led adaptation around the world. They launched a report that you can see on the screen here and this video at COP28 last year. It's all available on CDKN's website. The reason I'm going to show you the short example out of that video is because first, you'll see a concrete example of what locally led adaptation looks like in practice. It's an example from Uganda. And second, it's going to introduce you to Irene Walimwe. Irene is, to my mind, a classic example of a knowledge broker, and I'll come back to her later and explain why I say that. You can go ahead with the video now.
Climate change is real. I think we have to work with the people, the communities, the rural communities who know their problems. In 2010, the landslide which swept several villages shook the whole world. We have started planting bamboo. There's visible evidence that the bamboo is going to stabilize the soils. We have been eating bamboo for time immemorial, for many generations. It is a delicacy which has been embraced by our cultures. They are wild in the mountains. Nobody had ever attempted to plant our edible bamboo. That is why I came up with the solution of planting our own bamboo. Mount Elgon National Park and Uganda Wildlife Authority have also embraced this project. This AW bamboo is business-oriented. We are going to harvest this bamboo sustainably. It is working on food security for our people. It is creating the employment for the women and the youths. We are looking forward to growing this project.
All right. And so I said in the beginning that the central goal of Step Change is to accelerate equitable and inclusive locally led adaptation. And we're doing that around three priority areas. The top three wedges in this diagram. So I'm going to start on the left-hand side. Firstly, we are strengthening the implementation of ecosystem-based adaptation. What we mean by that is working with nature to build climate resilience for communities, and you've just seen an example of that in the video. In Step Change, though, for example, grantees in Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru are supporting communities, local governments, and the private sector to work together to collaboratively manage river catchments and securing clean and reliable water for millions of people. Second key area that we're focusing on is advancing access to appropriate and equitable adaptation finance. We're doing that because finance is an absolute stumbling block for climate action. You can have the best ideas, the best people. If you haven't got funding, you're not going anywhere. And so we're focusing on that and specifically getting funding down to the lowest possible level. In Step Change, for example, one of our grantees is working with a variety of city-level actors in Cameroon to support inclusive planning that will unlock finance for gender-responsive climate action in up to 3 cities. Third, we are ensuring that climate policies and practices integrate gender and social inclusion so that climate action works for everyone, especially the most vulnerable. For example, a Step Change grantee is working with the Ethiopian government to train government officials across all ministries to integrate gender into all climate policies from national right down to local government levels. Now, underpinning these 3 core thematic focus areas, which we think matter in the next 5 years of climate action, we are underpinning that work with capacity strengthening. And once again, we're focusing that work on two groups of actors that we see as really critical. The first we call key actors. This is anyone in the Global South that is responsible for developing climate policy or implementing climate action. And what we're doing is strengthening their capacity to both use climate knowledge and share climate knowledge. As an example, a Step Change grantee has partnered with the UNFCCC, that's the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. They have a needs-based finance program. And they've so far trained 125 government officials from 30 countries in the Global South in how to develop adaptation finance proposals for major climate funds, including the Global Environment Facility, the Adaptation Fund, and the Green Climate Fund. And so far, that's resulted in 16 ambitious regional programs with tangible steps to ensure their inclusion in regional priority funding pipelines. And this is only the first year of Step Change, so we're just getting started with that training. The second group that we're focusing on are these knowledge brokers I mentioned earlier. So these, I said, were intermediaries who connect people, they build trust, they drive action, and in so doing, they really accelerate climate action. Irene, who you saw earlier, did you notice the worlds that she inhabits and connects, from indigenous knowledge to the science of landslides and ecological restoration, from local cultural practices to food preferences? She's connecting all of those things to drive action. We're learning that people like Irene operate at multiple scales, from community level, like you saw there, they're in local government, they're in national government, they're in international negotiations. And we're investing roughly $5.5 million through Step Change, specifically in growing the field of climate knowledge brokers. What I mean by that is that we're increasing the number of people, or individuals and organizations with the skills and the funding to do that work. And make no mistake, what Irene is doing there is skilled work. This is not an afterthought that you add on to a very good research proposal. We have to start training people in how to do this work. And then my last slide. This just shows you the geographical distribution of the 8 projects that we're funding through Step Change. There's a wide variety of sizes of projects. For example, one grant is $18.5 million. That's the Climate and Development Knowledge Network, with a footprint in 3 continents, right down to $500,000 for much smaller projects. All of the projects in Step Change, including the global program, are led by Africa-based organizations. We're supporting 23 organizations in total through Step Change, and work is happening in 19 countries to really try and drive locally led adaptation. Now, the IPCC, that's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has made it clear that we need an all-of-society response to climate change. And for us, that means simply supporting 8 parallel projects is nowhere near enough. So in Step Change, we are purposely investing both funding and staff time in networking, mutual capacity strengthening between the organizations that we're funding and the countries that are involved in this program. At the same time, we're also scaling up lessons learned. We don't want a program that only talks to itself. We are purposefully synthesizing and sharing lessons outside of the program. Strong footprint in the conferences of the parties. COP28 last year, Step Change had a large number of our grantees there. We'll continue to do that. Regional climate weeks and a variety of other international events to make sure that we are sharing outside of the program.
Merci. Merci, Georgina, pour votre fantastique aperçu du partenaire activé.
Activity. This permitted us between changement, climate change and change.
Adhikari. Bhim is a senior program specialist with IDRC's Sustainable Inclusive Economies program, and he's going to tell us about IDRC's Strength project. Over to you, Bhim.
Thank you so much, Julie. Hi, everyone. So I'm pleased to be providing some update about our second climate project this morning, which we call the Strength project, strengthening loss and damage capacity in the Global South. So the main objective of this project is to develop the capacity of researchers and policymakers to respond to climate-related loss and damage in 4 countries, which are Bangladesh, Nepal, Senegal, and Vanuatu. So this project also aim to develop policy and mechanisms on loss and damage in this poor country. So before I move forward, let me first explain the importance of loss and damage. So alongside climate adaptation and mitigation, so loss and damage has emerged in global climate talks is the third pillar of tackling climate crisis. So as you know, when effort to mitigate impact of climate change do not go far enough, or when mitigation becomes inadequate, then the adaptation becomes necessary. And when adaptation reaches its limit, then the loss and damage ensue. So as you know, many natural and human systems have already reached their adaptive capacity in many climate vulnerable countries which have contributed very little greenhouse gas emissions. So loss and damage can result either from the slow onset event, like a sea level rise or glacial melts, or it could be a rapid onset event, like extreme rainfall, drought, or any other climate weather-related extremes. And loss and damage can be economic one, like a loss of income, damage to asset and property, or it could be a non-economic one, like a loss of life, health, indigenous knowledge, or damage to cultural identity. So we have asked one of our country partners from Vanuatu, her name is Florence Latu, to tell us about the impact of climate change in the Pacific Island. And it is what she had to tell us. There's a brief video here. Let's watch that one.
We are faced with tropical cyclones almost every 2 years now, and the environment that we used to treasure, we have our traditional medicine, leaves that we use, and the bush robs that we use to build traditional houses. Year after year, when we are faced with Category 5 or 4 tropical cyclones, you don't find them anymore, and it takes time for them to come back. So slowly and slowly, our young people don't learn how to build traditional houses in most of the islands now. So we are also losing that. It's hard to describe, but it's a reality.
So what we have just seen in this video, I think the climate-related impact and disasters are increasing every year. And this project in some other country found that, like in Nepal, the mountain flooding and glacial lake outburst kind of breaking new records, also the slow onset agricultural decline. In Bangladesh, there is a more erratic rainfall, and which causing the riverbank erosion and the seasonal flooding, leading to the internal migration challenges. And in Senegal, land degradation, desertification becoming a major issue, which is impacting food security, livelihood, and employment opportunity, particularly for rural women who represent almost 70% of the agricultural workforce in that country. So the idea of the wealthier nations financing loss and damage in a climate vulnerable country has always been part of the global climate talks for last many years. So the idea was first conceptualized by the Alliance of Small Island States back in 1991. However, it wasn't formally mentioned till 2007 in the Bali Action Plan. In 2019 at COP25, the country agreed to establish what we call the Santiago Network to catalyze the technical and financial assistance for loss and damage in developing countries. So in 2022 at COP27, there was a historical decision, and the country agreed to establish first ever loss and damage fund, which was historic because that was on the making for last many years. So last month or last year in COP28, the wealthier country started contributing to that fund. So far there is about like a 500 million contribution. Although this is not the huge amount compared to what is actually required to address loss and damage in developing countries, I think that signals kind of developed countries' willingness to address climate injustice in developing world. So the question comes, how do contribution made by these countries, including Canada, reach to the local people who really need the support on the ground? So this is going to be not easy because many climate vulnerable countries, particularly LDCs, least developed countries, and the small island developing states, there is no enough capacity and mechanism to address or to document vast number of loss and damage events infected by both slow and rapid onset events. So this Eastern project is helping government in these countries to effectively frame country-level process and policy on loss and damage. For example, in Nepal, where the country has just established a national framework on loss and damage, the research project there right now kind of planning local pilot projects to channel technical and financial assistance. Similar research is underway in Nepal, Bangladesh, and Senegal. And in Vanuatu, the government is currently establishing our national fund on loss and damage. So the research they're focusing on how to address both economic and non-economic loss and damage, working very closely with the Ministry of Climate and Environment. So the project also promotes sharing and collaboration among these 4 countries shown in the map, and also 6 other additional countries to develop kind of common and coherent framework on the loss and damage. That is going to help these countries to the even negotiation on the even CCC kind of discussions. So the global loss and damage debate will also be enriched by research findings. That is going to help countries, to develop a kind of common kind of position to take their end forward in this international negotiation. So overall, I think we are kind of envisioning 3 different impact from this project. The first one is more improved country capacity to respond to loss and damage. And the second, more sharing and collaboration between countries, or more South-South collaboration on this important topic. And finally, improved kind of country process on loss and damage globally. Thank you so much. I stop here.
Merci, Bhim, de nous avoir parlé du projet renforcement.
About that reinforcement project and the capacity and the response of the developing countries, and having illustrated the importance also of the mitigation and adaptation of the 3rd pillar.
How IDRC's support for Southern research and researchers is enabling local climate solutions and leadership and expertise to inform and sustain concrete local, regional, and global action. The initiatives they've highlighted, Step Change and Strength, also demonstrate how IDRC is mobilizing alliances for greater impact. COP28 proved that IDRC investments are at the cutting edge of research areas that are becoming focal points for global climate finance, including loss and damage, inclusive energy transitions, nature-based solutions, and the nexus of climate and the care economy. This work also spotlights the intersections between climate and food systems and climate and health. These intersectional issues were similarly key issues in climate negotiations and policy commitments by world leaders at COP28. Alors maintenant, c'est à votre tour.
Now for question and answers. Now that you are here in Ottawa, or you are actually remote, we are ready to answer your questions. Dorothy and myself are available, and also Georgina and Bhim. If you wish to, please ask some question and take advantage of this on the work that has been presented here today.
English or in French interpretation is available. There are microphones in the room for those in person. Online, you can submit a question by clicking the icon that shows a person with their hands raised. Enter your first and last name and click join. Then enter your question in the space provided and click the arrow icon. We're going to start with questions that were submitted in advance. Specifically, we received a number of questions related to artificial intelligence. So I'd like to just briefly kick off the Q&A by sharing a little bit more about the exciting new phase of IDRC's work on AI for development that I mentioned earlier. We're working closely with researchers in the Global South who are identifying challenges and unlocking viable AI solutions in their communities. For instance, this includes tools that can translate spoken English into Kenyan Sign Language in the education space, detect emerging waterborne pathogens across wastewater treatment plants in Tunisia, and protect women from violence in the Philippines, Argentina, and Mexico as we continue to drive efforts towards gender equality. This work helps to ensure that Southern concerns and voices are heard, which is why we're supporting research partnerships through alliances such as the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence. Nous finançons également le premier indice.
The first of artificial intelligence, a new type of tool, if you wish, founded on the that will permit us to evaluate and realize in terms of artificial intelligence responsible, which will be launched in June. This has to do in a domain which has evaluated quickly, and this is why a lot of our programs in this domain foresee funds to be allocated, which will permit actually take up emerging technologies of artificial intelligence and also to adapt to new developments.
About the importance of ensuring that knowledge is being shared for uptake and users by end users. So I'm going to invite Georgina to answer this question. So Georgina, how do we ensure that knowledge is being shared beyond more traditional avenues, such as online and journal publications? How can we foster effective knowledge co-production and knowledge sharing, especially in locations where knowledge is absolutely critical for local communities combating climate change?
Okay, thanks, Julie, and thanks for the question. I think there's two questions there. So the first question is, how do we ensure that knowledge is shared beyond publications and websites? And my simple response to that is we've got to fund it. You know, if you're putting 5% of your project budget to dissemination, then that's what you'll get. If you put 25%, if you put 40%, you're putting 50% to closing knowledge to action gaps, you're in a completely different game, and you have to really pay attention to the kind of partners that can support you to do that. So you have to ensure that there are skilled partners. I said earlier, this is skilled work, so we need to take that seriously and fund that work. The second question is how to foster effective knowledge sharing. And I love that question. That's about what are we learning about how to do this well. In the step change, you know, we've actually been gathering lessons about this and documenting it for a number of years now, and offering, there's some training courses coming out in how to do this. And I'll just share a couple of high-level lessons. The first thing that we're learning is that knowledge is not an object that is passed in whole from one person to another. Knowledge is always mediated by our worldviews, our values, our context. We always interpret what we receive. And because of that, knowledge, we have to understand that knowledge is built in relationship with others. And so dissemination is on one end of a scale of knowledge sharing. But if we start to understand the relational side of knowledge and the links to action, we're sort of moving over to the co-production space and co-producing knowledge between multiple actors who in the end we want to use that knowledge. So that's one sort of key lesson. The second is that many sources of knowledge are needed for climate action. If you think about any decision-making space, what you're dealing with there is an institutional context that has rules about how decisions are made. People sit in those institutions who hold values about what matters in the world, and then you have knowledge. So you have this knowledge, values, rules, interplay, and we have to understand that decision-making context. And then finally, and this is something for donors, we're learning that we have to get much more comfortable with the outcomes of our funding being quite uncertain right in the beginning. And that's not easy when we're dealing with taxpayers' money. I'd say IDRC has been doing this for a long time. Our outcome mapping, I'd say we're kind of pretty good, and even we struggle. And a lot of other donors out there who aren't as far along, I would say, as we are. So I still think this is a stumbling block that we're all dealing with. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Georgina. Oh, thank you. Ooh. Thanks, Georgina. Nous avons aussi reçu une question concernant
the question concerning our work relative to water and environment. For this question, I will go over towards Bhim to answer the question.
Julie, je vais répondre en anglais.
Oui, pas de problème.
So I think this is a very important kind of question, how we go about the water and sustainability. So for us, for IDRC, I think we have started a few years back. We started an initiative called Cities and Climate Change, in which we're trying to understand how local government are really addressing the water and climate issues together in the municipality planning or in their annual planning cycle. So that kind of what we do is that if you look at the city planning process right now in developing countries, they talk about like water, sorry, they talk about the road, they talk about electricity. So they have this planning cycle, but there's nothing something called climate water planning, something like that. So we have this project. We did the research in the watershed where the city getting water, and then there are a whole bunch of things happening, like land use change, like drying up the springs or small streams. So that research was done together with the municipalities, local government, and then we presented the research, and then finally, as an outcome, what happened that the water and climate issue was kind of integrated within the city planning process. So that was the first outcome, because the city realized that if you don't really now address the climate issue, if you don't plan in advance, we're going to suffer in the future. So the first outcome was integration of the climate and water issue into cities' planning process. And second, also resource allocation. Cities started kind of allocating budget for the climate adaptive water management. So that was the second outcome. And third, also we also create the local champion, particularly the city mayors, who are very active, pushing the water agenda, how cities should be moving forward to make sure that water management is sustainable. So that way, I think we kind of try to mainstream, climate and water into the regular development planning process. So that was, I think, one good example how I think sustainability can be addressed when we talk about the water management. And finally, because if you look at the water management, it's so far, I think it's pretty traditional, because we think, okay, there's a water source there, let's take this water. But nobody is thinking about how we should be really going about the adaptive, climate adaptive water management. So that's the way I think we should be thinking about the water management and any issue related to the sustainability. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bhim. Merci. So I think we can now move on to the live Q&A. Sorry. Christian is going to be, people can of course go up to the mic if anybody in the room has one, or Christian, who is at the back I now see, is going to provide some questions.
So we do have a question that's come in online from Akwasi Aidu. Many thanks for the excellent leadership transition that has taken place, and also for the inspiring, innovative work IDRC supports to close the research, advocacy, policy gaps in Global South development. Very inspiring as always. Going forward, is this perhaps the right time for IDRC to engage in co-funding or donor partnerships with Global South philanthropic institutions?
Sorry, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. I will start from because the first part was lovely comments, and so I'll start from the halfway point where the question begins. In regards to partnering with the Global South in research advocacy policy. Going forward, is this perhaps the right time for IDRC to engage in co-funding donor partnerships with Global South philanthropic institutions?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question, Akwasi. Absolutely. I think, we should have started yesterday, so it is the right time. I think, when Julie was speaking, there's no way that research can be done. The problems are big, complex, and global. So it's not just about the researchers coming together from the Global South, but I think the money, the philanthropy, needs to also now include not just money from the Canadian taxpayer. IDRC is already doing a lot of co-funding. And what I hear Akwasi asking is about philanthropy from the Global South. And absolutely, yes, it is time for philanthropy from the Global South to come on board so we can produce evidence that allows us to take things to scale as quickly as possible. And just to add that, it is not just philanthropy in the global south. We need to include, there's a bigger private sector. So we need to really think about research, the private sector, its public sector, civil society. It is that coordination and coalition of the willing that needs to happen. I don't know if Julie wants anything to add.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. I mean, I think you've pretty much answered it. Of course, we do have regional offices throughout the South. We have 5 regional offices in 2 in Africa, 1 in the Middle East, 1 in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 1 in Asia. And through those, we're always building partnerships, including with a very broad range of foundations, of private sector actors, of institutions, and building those general relationships in order to be able to move towards having more co-funding arrangements with Southern or global actors. So thanks again for that, Akwasi. I see Jean at the. Would you like to introduce yourself before you begin?
I will. I'm Jean Christie. I guess I'm kind of a retiring consultant. Excuse me, I also have a cough. I was at the meeting at the launch 3 years ago, I think, of the new 10-year strategy. I'm very excited by what I heard this morning, I have to say. And to build on the thanks and the accolades that others have said, I have 2 questions, and they're quite different, if I'm permitted, 2 quick questions. One is, particularly in the context of conflict, and how do you maintain and support research alliances and research, and the people who are doing the research in situations of conflict? So that's the kind of the substantive question. And I was really intrigued by something Dorothy said just in passing in her introduction. You talked about governance changes at IDRC and improving governance. And I would be very curious to know what some of those look like. Particularly, I go back to the land announcement, which can sometimes be vacuous, and the understanding that we're all dealing with decolonization on many continents. And I guess the question is, in the context of decolonization, what governance changes have happened or might be happening at IDRC? Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Julie. Maybe I can go with the second. Well,
sure.
Thanks. Excellent question. So I think, with respect to governance changes, I'll say yes. Per the IDRC Act, we should have up to 14 governors. So right now, and it is a governor in council process that appoints governors, and it continues to be done in a transparent, merit-based, very open selection process. And as a Crown Corporation, IDRC, I think, is one of the only that has the opportunity to have representation from the Global South. We don't only have to be Canadians, but we do have governors from other parts of the world. So that for us is a really big part of what it takes to look at the governance, bring voices, bring power and tools to the table that will help to decolonize who we are as an organization at that governance level. So we are not just talking, I believe, when we do the land acknowledgement, as you say, Jean, it is about decolonizing here, but it's about decolonizing the organization itself and looking at it from that, governance level. And the other part of your question around that is really, we will continue to ensure as governors that, our role is a role of governance, and, Julie and her team, they are here to run the organization, bring the strategy to life. And, we are that interface between the center, and the Canadian government. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. Okay. So we do have governors, who are based in Kenya, in the United States, very different from any other, I think, Crown Corporation in Canada at this point in time.
Thanks, Dorothy. And we are actually working hard to add more Southern governors to our roster of governors. So that's a big focus for the coming year, as we have some vacancies and we are trying to fill them with governors from the South. On the question around conflict, I know others probably can answer that better than I can, but I do know, of course, we do have programs where there are conflicts. It depends on the level of the conflict. Obviously, when there's certain kinds of conflict, it's difficult to continue to operate. But I think what we try to do is have a lot of flexibility with our partners. We continue to have open dialogues with them, and we really build relationships of trust with our partners so that we can continue to have the kind of work done even in situations where there is ongoing conflicts. So I don't know if anybody else, I know Santiago actually has some programming in that area maybe, but anyway, you're good. Okay, we're good. Do you want to respond at all? Oh, sorry, you were just reaching forward, looked like you were, okay, thank you. Please, at the microphone.
Hi, yes, Victoria Short. I'm with Africa Trade Desk, but I also am affiliated at the University of Ottawa's Open African Innovation Research Network. My question is actually for Bhim. You were mentioning loss and damage and all of these other incurring fees. How much are you guys looking at some of the tech innovations into insurance schemes that are affordable for small scale businesses, small scale agricultural producers, things like that? We have some clients in that, so hence my question.
Yeah, I want to answer it too.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a very important question, and that's something kind of really in our heart as well, what we like to do. So yeah, there are a couple of, I think, work we have been doing in this field, particularly around the climate finance kind of border theme, how we go about mobilizing finance for the climate action in the global south. So that obviously we know that public finance is not enough. Even this morning's question was about the philanthropic money. So there is a huge strain on the public finance. So I think what we are trying to explore what are the other ways of financing climate action in the global south, given the magnitude of the financing requirement in this country. So one thing we look at a few years back in South Africa, how we can, if you can establish some kind of risk pooling at the local level, like what we call the municipal level risk pooling kind of facility, it is almost like an insurance kind of facility. When there is a extreme kind of event, the individual insurance might not be enough to really cover that loss. So we're exploring, how we can pull the risks together so that, in the time of this big incident, that we'll be able to kind of compensate the farmers who really lost, either crops or any other agricultural land. So that's the one way I think really working with the local government and either insurance or reinsurance type of product, kind of tailor, kind of design in a very tailor-made way, depending on what kind of disaster we're talking about. That's the one. And a couple of our researchers also look at the weather-based agriculture index as well, because these are like the different kind of crop insurance. One we look at like Thailand, for example, that is called a parametric kind of insurance. When there is a certain threshold, like if there is a temperature goes beyond a certain level, and you really kind of lose the crops, so the crop production will decline. So we also look at that some of this product as well. And other thing we're also looking now, working with even the central banks, like how central bank can play a role in the green finance, particularly targeted to the SMEs, how we go about green finance. So there's that kind of work as well. And also looking at the international climate financing mechanism, like a green climate fund, we're trying to kind of help the countries, how country can really access for finance. So overall, yeah, all this financial product, I think, has been, part of our work as well. And these are, I think, important areas with, even for loss and damage now, I think the whole issue of the finance, because how we compensate, the loss has been done. Yeah, this has been part of our work, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Bhim. And if I could just add, I was lucky enough when I went to Kenya to visit one of our projects, which is using AI technology to support insurance products for smallholder farmers. And it was very, it was able to target specifically some of the climate-related, impacts on small farmers and be able to support them through an insurance product, through, using AI for agricultural extension, essentially, and for providing broader financing for them. So the different kinds of programming that's happening related to supporting that kind of insurance is really key and very exciting. Please. Oh, wait, sorry, one more. I think these will be the last two questions, if that's
Bonjour, je peux m'exprimer en français?
Bonjour, oui.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Bhim Adhikari.
I'm Bhim Adhikari. I'm very honored and very happy to be here today because I come from Africa, and I'm close to the IDRC. I appreciate very much what you are doing in Africa. I come from Burundi, which is near Rwanda, and really limits right at the borders of Rwanda. And I'm part of a national commission which is in charge of violence for persons which are victims of natural catastrophes. Violence, anything that all the projects represent there, it's a necessity, what your projects represent. I also saw what you did in Rwanda. Very happy. We have not had the chance to date to see you. We are here at IDRC, but it will come and maybe we will meet. My question is the following. I would like to know, on the two programs which were exposed here today, what do you envision for 2024, for the next few years actually? And what type of financing will there be there? Will there be an open financing? And how will we know once it opens for the populations that are victim to these type of climate change catastrophes, for thousands of families which are sleeping in the streets, and many families are deprived? So again, one time, and thank you very much. That is my question, if you wish. Is there anyone that could answer the question?
So much. I'll be responding in English. Sorry for that. So yeah, this is again very important question. I think the question is about how we really compensate, the victims of all these climate-related disasters, what financing looks like in the years to come. So for me, what I think that, if you recall, even last year's COP28 discussion, the reforming international financing institution is a really big on agenda. Because so far, I think we have this divide. We have a development finance and you have climate finance. So personally, what I'm saying that there shouldn't be this divide anymore. Everything has to be climate finance now. Whatever World Bank does, or all the MDB, they would like to do, everything has to be climate finance. Because of the requirement I think we have right now, this tiny money, this dedicated climate finance, we're talking about, let's say, $1 billion. By 2020, I think they committed $100 billion, they never deliver. So I think what we have is, by the way, I think the discussion is going that direction. These countries are really demanding, all the international financial institutions, they really have to kind of align their finance according to the country's climate need. So something I think we have also done in few countries, looking at how multilateral development bank are kind of aligning their finance to countries' climate commitment. So for me, that's where I think finance should be coming from, a big chunk of money. And also, obviously, philanthropy, private sector money we are talking about, and there is a huge work to be done really to kind of scale up this finance. That's where I think the world is going, and down the road, 10 years down the road, I'm not surprised if World Bank is spending 100% money on the climate. That's my kind of dream. Thanks.
Merci. Et aussi, il y a des mises à jour.
Also, there's updates which come from the regional offices also, and we will keep you abreast of that situation.
Excellent presentation of all panelists. My name is Mohammed Nassimi. I am from Green Environment and Development Organization. My question is related to the conflict. As all of us know, that the impact of the climate change are exacerbated in fragile states and LDCs. I think there should be more attention comparing to the developing countries, because the problem is more severe in in conflict zone. Conflict is one problem, and the climate change disaster is another problem, which is double the suffering of the people. How the researcher and the NGOs can be recipient of the funds from IRDC. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your question. I think it really speaks to the issue around the general poly-crisis that's affecting the world. So when we have a crisis and then another crisis, it's not just two separate crises. It's really those crises interacting with one another and becoming much more severe. So I think what IDRC has been doing is trying to really respond not only in sort of the silos of different kinds of programs, but really to think through how we're addressing those crises as a collective. So I think that is a very important issue. And in terms of your question around support, we have many ways in which we provide support to Southern organizations. We do calls for proposals. Our regional office staff are traveling and reaching out to people throughout the Global South to meet different kinds of organizations that we might work with. So there's many different ways, including those calls. And of course, that information is also available on our website. So if you wanted to look at that and get a better sense of how we support Global South actors, that would be excellent. I think that's it for our questions today. I really want to thank all of you for being here today. I want to thank my colleagues, especially you for having done those presentations, our board chair, Dorothy, and all of the staff who are doing all of the amazing work that IDRC does. So thank you so much, and thank you very much for coming. Thank you.